As usual, we will begin by going for refuge and rousing bodhicitta. So even though we are reciting in Tibetan, please try to keep the meaning in mind. The meaning being that from now until enlightenment, we go for refuge to the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the sublime Sangha, the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. And that we will practice the 6 transcendences of generosity and so forth in order to achieve Buddhahood, to help all sentient beings. So thinking of that meaning, please recite these words of the prayer. O Sanje Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dane Chapsum Je Dagi Chenso Gibe Sunam Je Drola Penjir Sanje Drobar Sho Sange Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dane Chapsum Je Dagi Chenso Gibe Sunam Je Drola Penjir Sanje Drobar Sho Sange Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dane Chapsum Je Daki Jinzo Gibe Sunam Je Drola Pinjir Sanje Drobar Sho. Now we will recite the Four Immeasurables. So think to yourself, may all sentient beings be happy and of the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be parted from the greatest joy that is devoid of suffering, and they may dwell in the great equanimity, free of attachment or aversion to those near or far. Simjen tamje dewa tan dewe judan dembro juji donga dan donga ji judan rawar jurji dongal mebe dewa tamba tamindrawa jurji nyerin chada nitan rawe tanyon champola nebra jurji. The Dharma Expanse Palace of Akanishta is the essence of all Buddhas at the 3 times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious root Guru. Please bless me and all sentient beings that our minds may become the Dharma. Bless us that the Dharma may become the path. Bless us that the path become confusion, and bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. And so now think to yourselves that we must bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings, out of the great mass of suffering that is samsara and bring them to the state of lasting happiness of Buddhahood. In order to do that, we must achieve Buddhahood. And in order to achieve Buddhahood, we must understand what we are doing, and that is why we do study. In particular, we must understand the nature of samsara. Because if we don't understand the nature of samsara, we'll never be able to free ourselves from it, let alone anyone else. And so here, today, as we are listening to these teachings primarily on interdependence, which is the nature of samsara, think to yourself that you're listening to these teachings in order to understand it so you can free yourself and all other sentient beings from the cycle of interdependence. And thinking in this way, please listen with this motivation of bodhicitta. Now the Dharma we are listening to is the Treasury of Abhidharma by Vasubandhu, as explained by the Ninth Karmapa Wangchuk Dorje in his commentary, Youthful Play. And this chapter, the commentary Youthful Play has 8 chapters, and so we're talking about the 3rd chapter, the teachings on the world. And in these teachings on the world, there are 2 major parts: the world of sentient beings, the world, the external world that contains them. And the world of sentient beings has 5 topics: the classifications of wanderers who are born, the nature of interdependence, the manner of birth, the conditions for abiding after birth, the minds of staying and dying, and categorizing beings in 3 groups. And here we have finished the first, the classifications of wanderers, and we are now on the second, the nature of interdependence, the manner of birth. And this teachings on the nature of interdependence, the manner of birth, has 3 topics: the manner of the aggregates alone, link rebirth, the beginningless continuum of the aggregates, and understanding the nature of interdependence. And those first 2 we spoke about yesterday. They were each 1 stanza. And then we've come to the 3rd section, the nature of interdependence, which has 4 topics: the periodic links of interdependence, the essence of each link, teaching the 3 all afflicted through examples, and teaching these links as the 4 states. So we are in the first, the discussion of the periodic links of interdependence. And so there's an overview of the classifications and an extensive explanation of the links. So the overview we discussed yesterday, and we also began the extensive explanation of the links yesterday. It has 3 parts: how they're completed in 3 lifetimes, grouping them into afflictions, karma, and bases, and dispelling others' doubts. So the first part, how they are completed in 3 lifetimes, is what we started yesterday. And there are 4 topics: explaining their individual natures, explaining the 3 periods that arise, teaching that these are periodic, and rebutting that this contradicts the sutras. So here, really what we're talking about is what are these 12 links of interdependence that we hear about interdependence a lot when we hear Dharma teachings, especially if you've ever been to, I can't imagine by a teaching by the Dalai Lama where he doesn't mention interdependence. I just don't think he always talks about it. Many other masters talk about it all the time. It's just really a critical factor. And it's not just in the Tibetan tradition, it's critical when you talk about the Theravada tradition, critical in Mahayana Buddhism. It's really a foundational aspect of Buddhism. This is really important that we understand how interdependence works. Because it really is a question of, we wonder, how did we get where we are? Where are we going? What is happening with us now? What produced us? Where are we going? And that's all taught in these teachings on the 12 links of interdependence. So you could say that this is really, where does Buddhism give its basic answers about the big questions of life? It's here. If you want to know the philosophical questions. The question of the meaning of life, that's an easy one. The meaning is, easy. It's whatever meaning you give it. But the question of how did we get here? Where are we going? What is the nature of what we are? This is the topic of the 12 links of interdependence. So it's really important that we think about it. You might just think of it as some sort of a little list, but it's not. You have to think about the meaning of the list. You might think about it as something that talks about, well, how is it that we kind of cycle through actions from one to another on sort of a shorter level? And it does cover that, and we'll go through that a little bit today. But also there's the level that the Buddha most frequently taught it, which is showing the progression of how did we get from whatever preceded this life to this life. And when we think about what's going to happen to me after I die, that's really what we're talking about here in these 12 links of interdependence. There are many different levels of interdependence, as we'll talk about at the end of this talk today. But this is the level that the Buddha repeated over and over again in the sutras. From the condition of ignorance, there is formation. From the condition of formation, there is consciousness. From the condition of consciousness, there is name and form. From the condition of name and form, there is the 6 sense bases. From the condition of the 6 sense bases, there is feeling. From the condition of feeling, there is there is craving. From the condition of craving, there is grasping. From the condition of grasping, there is becoming. From the condition of becoming, there is birth, and from the condition of birth, there is aging and death and sorrow and lamentation and unhappiness and fighting And from through this cycle, there comes the entire mass of suffering of samsara. So this is why it is so important when we talk about this chapter as teaching the truth of suffering. Here is really a big explanation of why is it the truth of suffering, because it arises in through the 12 links of interdependence. So we are discussing here in terms of the question of how the 12 links are completed in 3 lifetimes. We've come to the second part of this. There are 4 topics: examining their individual natures, examining the 3 periods that arise, teaching that these are periodic, and rebutting that this contradicts the sutras. Of these 4, we've completed the first or on the second. It is on the bottom of page 235, and it's got 3 parts. The 3 parts are basically previous life, this life, next life. 3 lives, right? That's fairly simple in some ways. So the text is previous afflictions, ignorance. Previous karma is formations. And actually, when I translated this, I took a little bit of a shortcut, and there actually should be the state of prior afflictions is ignorance. That of previous karma is formations. I was trying to fit it in a short line length. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And here it's important to say state. The state of previous afflictions is ignorance. So the previous here means the previous lifetime. The afflictions, of course, are greed, hatred, and so forth. But the state means like the 5 aggregates at the moment that we're at the time that we're doing afflicted conduct is the ignorance. So as it says, the previous period's 5 aggregates during afflicted conduct is the link of ignorance. So that means when we have the afflictions in a previous lifetimes, that is the link of ignorance, right? So in relation to this life, these are called the link of ignorance because the afflictions always act simultaneously with ignorance, and the afflictions always arise by the power of ignorance. So when you have any afflictions, for example, if you have the affliction of desire, the affliction of desire is always accompanied by ignorance. Anger is always accompanied by ignorance. There is no affliction that is not accompanied by ignorance. It's like there's a Tibetan way of, I'm not sure if it's originally a Tibetan way of saying it, but you can, but it's commonly taught in Tibetan. There's a Khenpo David, one of Trungpa Rinpoche's teachers, also taught about it. The king, what is it? The ignorance is like the king, and hatred and desire are like the ministers. Or to put it in another way, the ignorance is like the mafia don, and then the henchmen are like desire and desire and hatred. And when the dawn is coming, you know that the henchmen are also on their way, right? When the king comes, you know that the courtiers are also coming. So when ignorance is there, then you know that greed, hatred, desire, envy, wrong view, doubt, and so forth are also afflicted doubt, and so forth are also sure to be around somewhere. And when you see any of those you recognize that you've got a wrong view. You know that ignorance is there. When you've got hatred, there's ignorance there. How is there ignorance when you have hatred? It's because you are seeing an object and not seeing its nature. Instead, you are seeing it as a threat or a difficulty, and so that prompts the hatred aversion that then leads to anger. So ignorance is like the king. It's the main one, and so therefore the other ones come. So, and it also includes all the other aggregates at that time. So all of the afflictions, most of the afflictions, with the exception of view, would be in the aggregate. Which aggregate would they be in? Would they be form? No. Are they consciousness? No. Are they feeling? No. Are they formations? Some are. Wrong view would be formation. The rest? No, most of them are formations, conceptions. Wrong view would be a conception. and the rest of them would all be formations. So most of them are formations. When you think of the, as is discussed in the first chapter, which of course we went through last year, that wasn't broadcast over the internet, but with the afflictions are pretty much formations, most of them, just wrong view. So it's the 5 aggregates. So it's not only ignorance, but also it's the form, your body and so forth at that time, the physical form at that time, and also the consciousness that is concurrent with the ignorance and so forth at that time. That's all the link of ignorance. Then the next one is previous karma as formations, and the explanation of this in the commentary reads, the last 2 lines of page 235, the 5 aggregates in the previous lifetime at the time of accumulating more meritorious and other karma are formations. So at the time that you're accumulating karma, now accumulating karma, we'll get to exactly what that means in a few weeks. But basically when you're doing some action that's going to have a karmic result, for example, you can do a meritorious action. It says meritorious and other. That means meritorious, non-meritorious, and unmoving. So meritorious acts are basically good things, generosity, discipline, and so forth. The non-meritorious actions are like killing, stealing, and so forth, lying, and all that. Then the unmoving karma is the karma of the absorptions of the form and formless realm, which ripens only as that. So those are the 3 types that are described here: meritorious, non-meritorious, and unmoving. So we can leave those aside right now. We'll get to them later. It's the 5 aggregates that you're engaging in that act. So it says meritorious here. So let's say you're doing something meritorious. So at the time you're doing something meritorious, for example, let's imagine that you are reciting the refuge prayer. So your body and your mouth and your breath and everything as you're breathing in order to recite the refuge prayer, that's all what? That's the aggregate of form, right? That's the form. And then there's a feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. There is some sort of a conception. This is good, this is bad, unless you are beyond conception, but most of us aren't. There are the formations, and because this is a virtuous action, then you have to have a conscience. You have to have a sense of a good conscience and a sense of, what is it? I'm trying to think of the word, a sense of embarrassment or of being not wanting to offend anyone else. So you could say shame, although that has different meaning these times. And there's another word that I thought of last week that has gone from my mind right now. At any rate, you also have faith and these other mental factors that are all present at the same time. So those are their formations at that time in the previous lifetime. And then you have the consciousness, which is just the mere awareness. So you have all 5 aggregates. So both of these links, that's why it's important to add the word state to the root. Because it's all 5 aggregates, and we're calling it by the main one. So formations, the word formation in Sanskrit is sanskara. So sanskara has the sense of working, doing, acting. So formations means working. It also has the same sense when we are talking about the formations as mental factors as formations. They're also mentally doing. They're the things that do the work in the mind in a sense. So it's like doing. But it's all 5 aggregates at that time. Did I change my glasses today? I didn't. So then the next one is, so that's what happens in the previous life. And there it's kind of short. And then we have what arises in the middle. The aggregates at linking consciousness and name and form is on from there until the 6 sense bases emerge. Those are until 3 are assembled. Contact is 1 till one knows the causes of pleasures and pain, etc. Then feeling until sex, and craving is greed for possessions and for sex. Close grasping is then chasing after in order to obtain enjoyments. Performing actions that result in an existence is becoming. And so here we have all of the 8 links that occur in the middle lifetime listed here. So we have consciousness, And then name and form is on from there. And those are until the 6 sense spaces emerge. And those last until the 3, the object, the faculty, and awareness and consciousness come together. So that's, and then you have contact. And then from the contact, you get feeling. Then feeling is once you understand what types of contact lead to which feelings, like that if you touch a burning flame, you're going to get burnt. When you understand that, then we would call it feeling. And then from that, you realize, oh, if I do this, I can get it, and that leads to craving. And craving leads to grasping, which is really trying hard to get it. And then that leads to becoming, which is actually another word for karma, for acting. So that's generally performing actions that result in an existence. So doing some sort of a karmic act that is going to result in rebirth, in becoming, is the link of becoming. So what are these in particular? The aggregates at linking. So the single moment of the 5 aggregates at the time of rebirth linking in the mother's womb is the link of consciousness. So remember, we have to put it in the traditional explanation, you've got the parents. The parents are copulating. There is a mixture of blood and semen in the uterus, and the consciousness enters there, and it says, mine. That's the moment of consciousness. It's always afflicted. Okay? It's always a sense, mine, me, it's afflicted. Okay? Consciousness. And then, and the link of name and form is the 5 aggregates on from there, the moment of rebirth linking, until, or before, up until, the 6 sense spaces emerge. So, as we talked about yesterday, in the fetal stages, at the beginning there is a mental faculty and there is a body faculty, but there is no eye, ear, nose, or tongue faculty at the beginning. It's just this little zygote or embryo. It's got, it's a little more than a worm functionally. It can't even feed itself, basically. It's in the there's a little thing in the womb if we're talking about a human birth. So that's name. So this is the period of name and form. You've got name, means the 4 aggregates that work with thought. These are feeling, conception, formation, and consciousness. And then form refers to the form aggregate. So you say the words name and form, you should just think to yourself, name and form, a synonym for the 5 aggregates. Okay? But so that's until the point where the 6 sense spaces emerge. Now you already have 2. You have the mental faculty, and you already have the body faculty. But we call the link the 6 sense faculties, 6 sense spaces, because at least in a human birth, you're going to have, if all your faculties are complete, you're going to have all 6. So here, to continue with the commentary, this is on the 4th line of the commentary on page 236. Name is the 4 aggregates. Like names, they're unobstructive. So form is obstructive. It's got something you can knock it, but you can't knock the name aggregates. Form is the fetal stages of mushiness and so forth. So we went over those the other day. There's mushinessness, the oval, the oblong, then the solid, the hands and feet move. Somewhere along in there, the faculties come a little bit later. Hair, fur, and nails and such, the faculties with form, etc. So basically, gradually, the faculties develop in the womb. The link of those, the 6 sense spaces, is the 5 aggregates from the time when those have completely emerged until the 3 of the object faculty and consciousness are assembled. So the link of the 6 sense spaces is the 5 aggregates from the point in the womb when the faculties emerge until there is contact of the 3, the object, faculty, and consciousness. And so until they're assembled, that means, because in order to have a perception, you have to have the object, you have to have a sensory perception, this is. You have to have the object, you have to have the sensory faculty, and you have to have consciousness. And when these 3 come together, then you can have consciousness. So up into the point where the faculties and the mind and everything is capable of making that link, That is what we call the link of the sixth sense bases. You can kind of think of it as that baby's got the faculties, but it just doesn't know how to use them yet. And so at the point that the baby knows how to use the faculties, which may be at a different time for the different faculties, maybe feeling is a little bit earlier. And then the baby comes out, and the baby first opens up its eyes, and it doesn't know what it's seeing. It's unable to kind of produce a consciousness. At some point, the baby's able to, start focusing on things. And so that's like the three coming together and making a sense of, like, the baby's like, oh, wow, I can actually see something. What's that? It's mom. Or what is it? I don't know. I have no idea what that is, but it's giving me food. I don't care. Whatever babies think. Or the baby can hear things. And anyways, but it's up until that point where the three can come together to make a consciousness. Then the link of contact is the five aggregates from then until the object, faculty, and consciousness. And it's the five aggregates from then until the object, faculty, and consciousness are assembled, and one knows the causes, a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral or other object of pleasure and of pain, etc., including neutral feeling. So this stage, in terms, if we're looking at small children, can last a little while. And I think it's also a little bit different for the different sensory faculties. But, you've got the six sense spaces, and they come together, they can make contact, but they still don't really know, oh, wait a minute, is this going to produce pleasure or is it going to produce flame? Look at that pretty flame over there. I'm going to grab it. Look at this stove. I'm going to put my finger on it and see what happens. They don't know yet. Then at some point they're going to know, oh, if you touch a hot stove, you're going to get burnt. That is that's the point of feeling. So it's when you're able to discern it. So at the beginning, when you don't know how to link the sensations and the other, that's the link of contact. And feeling is how to put them together, essentially. So the link of feeling is the five aggregates from the time one is able to discern the causes of the three feelings until the lust for sex arises. Well, it's not just sex, actually. It's any type of desire for any type of anything you can enjoy, anything you can use. Food, comforts, physical comforts, hot baths, I don't know, whatever. You're enjoying feel like you want to enjoy the sensory pleasures. But of course, sex is mentioned here because it's one of the primary ones and one of the sources of our primary difficulties in life. There would be no world literature without it. And the link of craving is the five aggregates during the period of especial greed for the possession of desirable things and for sex, before one actively seeks the object. So here we've got two different phases. You've got this is like when you initially get that desire for something. I gotta have that, but before you do anything about it. So it's that craving. That's that period. That's the link of craving. And so then the next link is the link of close grasping. Close grasping is perhaps a very literal translation of the Sanskrit and the Tibetan. Upadana. The prefix upa means close. Upadana. And so in Tibetan it's nyoralemba. It's really functionally the same as grasping in English. But I put the prefix in, or translated the prefix. Okay, the five aggregates. During the period when one actively begins seeking and then chases after everything in order to attain the enjoyments of desirable objects such as horses, cattle, grain, treasures, and so forth. You have to remember this was written in Tibet back in a period before they had motorcycles. Now they'll be chasing after motorcycles and Yartsa Gombu, the cordyceps mushrooms. Nowadays, that's what they. But in the previous days, what did you want? You want horses, cattle, because horses you can go places. Cattle, they give you milk and power and grain because it fills you up. So now what do we want? Well, whatever we want, iPhones and sex, basically. So. Those are whatever enjoyments it is that you want. Those are the things that you chase after. So that's that. Those are, and then the five aggregates that in chasing after things, so in trying to get something, you do something. You perform an action or karmas that accumulate virtue and non-virtue and will later produce a happy or miserable result of existence is the link of becoming. So you want that iPhone and you do something unvirtuous to get it, that is committing a negative action that will result in falling into a lower realm. Like you steal it, right? You do something to get what you want, and if you do an unvirtuous action in order to get what you want, then that results in a miserable existence, the 3 lower realms. If you do a virtuous action in order to get what you want, that results in the 3 higher existence, and either way you're ending up in samsara. As it will arise, it is becoming is a synonym for karma. So becoming, when something's becoming, it's arising. So what makes things arise? It's the actions that make them arise. If you examine it closely, it is not separate in essence from the interdependent link of formation. Interesting. So formation and becoming are essentially the same. But what's the difference? This one is in a previous life. This one, becoming, is in this lifetime. So that's the difference. And this is why it's like a cycle that goes over and over again. And then the third part is explaining what arises in the next life. Linking rebirth again is birth, up until feeling, aging, and death. So the next lifetime we have only 2 different. We have 2. We have birth and aging and death. Oh yeah. Okay, so when karma makes one die in this, that is in this lifetime, and migrate to the next, that is the next, okay. So when karma makes you die, then you've done your becoming, the karma, and then at some point, the ripening of your karma in this lifetime is you die. Then you go through the Bardo station, and then you take rebirth, the moment of birth. That the 5 aggregates at that point is the linking of rebirth again, are the link of birth. I think we've been here, we've seen that with another link. What is that other link that is the same? Consciousness. It's the first one in this lifetime. So they're essentially, in their essence, they're the same, but it's just a question of what perspective are you looking at it from? This lifetime, consciousness. The next lifetime, birth. Okay? And then what is presented as the link of consciousness in this life is presented as the link of birth in the next lifetime. Then, in order to instill world weariness in disciples, the Bhagwan, that is the Buddha, taught that the aggregates from birth up until feeling are the link of aging and death. So we've got the links of name and form, 6 senses is contact, feeling, a feeling. These four together are this state of aging and death, right? Do you get that? So these 4 are equal to that. But just again, it's a question of which perspective are you looking at it from, in terms of this lifetime or in terms of the future lifetime. So teaching that these are periodic, this has 2 points. And so the actual is here, it's in the middle of page 237, it says, they claim that this is periodic. So periodic, what this refers to is we have different ways of talking about the links of interdependence. We can talk about the 12 links as we are here in terms of the 3 periods of the previous, this lifetime, and future lifetime. Those are 3 periods, so it's periodic. As it says here, there are 4 ways to classify the links of interdependence: momentary, prolonged, connected, and periodic. So this is the periodic, they claim. They claim meaning that it is the great exposition school that explains this. The manner in which the 12 links are posited as a single moment is described in the auto-commentary. So we have momentary. The four are momentary, prolonged, connected, and periodic. So here in this commentary, it doesn't really describe two of these links very much. In fact, they don't seem to be explained in great detail in any of the commentaries. The momentary means that they're all happening in one moment, and that is explained next. The periodic is what we're explaining here. But we also have the prolonged, or you could also say the continuous, and there is also the connected. So there are these four. And so the two in them, I'll just explain those briefly now. You can just kind of store this in your mind if you feel like it. This is like, you can think of this as an Abhidharma factoid, something that you need to know or that you should know, that you might might help you get a question right on the Abhidharma version of the Jeopardy quiz, but right now it's not the most important thing. Basically, when we're talking about it in terms of the prolonged or continuous, then we're talking about how the links lead from one to another over a period of time, continuously over a period of time. When we talk about it in terms of being connected, this is talking about how they are cause and result. So connected means cause and result, and prolonged or continuous means that like the one leads into the next over the period of time. In a sense, you can therefore say that this presentation of them as periodic is also a presentation of them as continuous. So then we can also count them all in a single moment. So how does that go? Well, this is described in the auto-commentary and quoted here in this commentary, as in many commentaries, in fact. How are they momentary, you ask? So they refers to the 12 links, of course. In a single moment, there are all 12 links. This is how. That which is the delusion that kills out of the power of greed is ignorance. For example, you want a chicken dinner. So you kill the chicken. You didn't used to be able to go to the supermarket. You used to have to kill your chickens, right? So you want the chicken dinner, you kill the chicken. That delusion that makes you kill at that point is the link of ignorance. That which is the volition is formation. So at the moment that you're killing the chicken, not only do you have the ignorance, you also have the volition of taking life. Individually knowing things is consciousness, the fact that you're able to discriminate and see the chicken and your knife and whatever, or the axe. I guess in New England people used to use as axes, but someplace, somebody you can also wring the chicken's neck, whatever. And being able to distinguish what you're doing at that moment is consciousness. The four aggregates that arise simultaneously with consciousness are name and form. So you also have your body that is getting ready to wring the neck, your feeling, you've got the conception, tasty chicken, you've got the formations, and you've got the, so those are the other four aggregates. So those are the name and form. The faculties that reside within name and form are the 6 sense bases. So these are the 5 sensory faculties, the mind faculty, as well as the other faculties, including life force and your life force, your male faculty, and so forth. These other faculties that are there in the afflicted time. The 6 sense bases coming together, that is contact. Actually, I think this should be translated differently. The 6 sense bases assembling is contact. So the assembling means at the moment you're having a cognition, you have 3 things assembling. You have the object, the faculty, and the consciousness, right? So those 3 assembling, that's contact. Experiencing contact is feeling. And so you have the feeling, it's going to be pleasurable, unpleasurable, maybe it's kind of icky and sticky. Maybe the chicken's kind of gross, or maybe it feels kind of nice in your fingers, I don't know. The entanglers that are concurrent with that are grasping. So entanglers is a synonym for the afflictions. And with what it means, it's like the afflictions when they're really strong and they're like about you to get you to do something. The entanglers are the afflictions when they're like so strong that you can't avoid following them, or almost can't avoid following them and going into doing an action. There are lots of different words for afflictions, but here is when they're really strong and they're like motivating you to do an action. When you can't resist them, the irresistible afflictions, those are entanglers. Where did we get to? The actions of body, speech that those motivate is becoming. So wringing that neck, that is the becoming. The rising of those actions is birth. Those actions are momentary. They arise and perish in every moment. So that is becoming. Their complete ripening is aging. So the fact that they have arisen out of causes and that they come and that is the ripening. That is the ripening, and that is the aging, and their disintegration is death. So in this way, we have all 12 links happening in any moment that you are wringing a chicken's neck or doing any other karmic action. You can also perform this, do the same sort of analysis. I mean, he said killing at the beginning, so I just did that. You can also do this with for example, with generosity. You can do the same analysis, and maybe that would be an interesting example for you all to do on your own. I don't feel like I need to go through it right now. Think about when you do an example, when you think about doing a gift, making a gift, you're being generous. Well, what is the ignorance that's there? If you're thinking, you're thinking what is the ignorance of? I'm going to do a virtuous action. I'm going to do a virtuous action. That's part of the ignorance. Maybe it's just because you haven't realized the nature of the Four Noble Truths or whatever, but as long as we are in performing defiled karmas, whether they're defiled virtues or defiled unvirtuous actions, there's defilement there, right? That defilement is the ignorance. When we're talking about afflictions, this is an important point that we went over last year. When we're talking about the afflictions and ignorance, they are not necessarily negative. Sometimes people translate the Sanskrit word klesha as negative emotions, but they are not necessarily negative because you can do good things that are motivated by afflictions. You can make a gift out of an affliction. I want to be reborn in the God realm, to give a traditional Buddhist example. I want to get a good result for myself, so I'm going to give this. This is a good motivation, but it's an afflicted motivation. So the afflictions, so like the ignorance that's there, is not negative. It's neutral. Because neutral, if you're doing something out of ego clinging, you do something nice, but you do it out of ego clinging because you're an ordinary individual. You can't blame yourself for it. Of course, until we achieve the path of seeing, we're going to do things out of ignorance, and we're going to do things out of ego clinging because it's just there almost all the time. So you can't blame yourself for it. You do something good. There's a bit of ego clinging in there. If you're just honest with yourself, you'd probably have to admit that. It's neutral, that ego clinging, because you can do good things. It's what we call the view of the self or the view of the personality. You can do good things, and that is the ignorance at the moment. So when it's also when you're doing performing the virtuous actions, there's also that ignorance there. And then the other ones are similar as you go through to each of them. You're making an act of generosity, and so you've got the formation and the consciousness and so forth, similar to here. So you might take some time this evening to kind of look through and think about that for yourself. So now the word, in the root it says, they claim that this is periodic. So the word claim here is one that Vasubandhu puts in. He uses this word throughout the text. When he wants to show that this is a view of the Great Exposition school that the Sutra school doesn't quite agree with, and by extension also Vasubandhu is presenting it because he learned the Abhidharma from the Kashmiri Great Exposition school, but he thinks maybe there's something not quite right about it. So there's a little dispute here. And the word claim, as is starting at the last line of page 237, the word claim indicates that this is the Great Exposition's position. It is a skeptical word from the Sutra school, which says that it is admissible to present the six sense bases in name and form as periods of the five aggregates. But how could one present ignorance and formation to be how could ignorance and formation be a period of the five aggregates? So basically they're saying that what the Sutra school is disputing is in the Great Exposition, we say that each of these is the five aggregates at that state. The Sutra school is disputing that ignorance would be the five aggregates and that formation would be the five aggregates. That's the difference here. And so here, sort of dispelling that doubt, the Great Exposition response, in a sense, is the link is called by the principle. If in all 12 links there are all 5 aggregates, why is the first link known simply as ignorance, you wonder? Right, because why are we picking out the word ignorance for the 5 aggregates at that moment of the afflictions in the previous lifetime? Well, it's because ignorance is the main one there. Because at that point, ignorance is principle. The link is called by the name of the principle, like saying, the king has come when an army with 4 divisions has arrived. So when you have an army with the 4 divisions of the cavalry, the elephants, the chariots, and the infantry, and they all come, you know that the king is also on his way. So, the king is the main one who's leading that army with the 4 aggregates, or you could say your Army, Navy, Air Force, and Space Force. In the same way, the links from formation to aging and death are known by that which is principle at that point. So basically, for all of these things, the main thing at the point, the main factor is the one that's given the name, even though they all include the 5 aggregates. So rebutting that this contradicts the sutras. So here the issue is that in the Abhidharma, there are extensive teachings on interdependence. And it teaches that, in fact, all phenomena are interdependent. So the teachings in the interdependent on interdependence are vast, and everything is interdependent. We hear about this when we talk about interdependence in the Mahayana. We often talk about it in this level of everything being dependent upon each other, as interdependence as being synonymous with emptiness and so forth. That which anything that is able to be interdependent is able to be emptiness, and these two come together. That's talking about it in terms of all composite phenomena being interdependent. But here we're only talking about it in terms of the 3 phases in this lifetime. So why is that? Isn't this contradictory? So this is taught in the root by saying, it's taught to reverse ignorance about the previous, next, and middle. In the Abhidharma, the links of interdependence are taught with regards to both sentient beings and all other composite phenomena. So everything. So why is it here only? Why do the sutras only talk about the regard to sentient beings? In the sutras, however, they are taught only taught with regard to sentient beings in order to reverse the doubt and ignorance about the self in the 3 times of the previous, next, and middle lives, such as the doubt: did it occur or not? Will it occur or not? What is it like here in the middle? So here we have 3 different types of doubt, and these are just kind of the, what do you say? They're your basic existential doubts. Move things out of the way. So I have a little bit more room to put that down flat. So you're basically we always wonder, this is like, I think lots of people think about this as teenagers, as children or teenagers, but sometimes we continue to wonder, we're like, how did I get here? How did I end up here? Why am I? How did I come to be? And then there is kind of the feeling like, what's going to happen to me in the future? What's going to happen? What will I be? Am I going to be reborn in heaven? Am I just going to become nothing? What's going to happen to me in the future? And then they kind of wonder, well, what am I now? What is this? So these are like the real existential questions that everyone asks. It's not just Buddhists, Christians and atheists, agnostics. Everyone asks these questions. How did I get here? What's going to happen to me? What am I? And so that's what these teachings are. That's why in the sutras it teaches these 12 links of interdependence in this periodic way, showing what happened in our previous lifetime, the 2 links of ignorance and formation, what happens in this lifetime, the 8 from consciousness to becoming, and what will happen in the future lifetime with birth and aging and death. So it's to kind of show, how does it go? And so this is why it says in the sutras over and over again, it's like, because there is this, that occurs. Because this arises, that arises. Because there is ignorance, formation occurs. Because ignorance arises, formation arises. And it goes through this with each of the links in the sutras. Because there is formation, there is consciousness. Because consciousness arises, formation arises. And it's very careful to kind of repeat it. In a sense, occurring and arising are more or less the same, really. But it's kind of emphasizing it, like to say, really, this you have to think of. Because there is ignorance, there is formation. Because there is formation, there is consciousness. So it's like, as I said at the beginning, because of the condition of ignorance, there is formation. Because of the condition of formation, and actually this is something that the Buddha said over and over and over again. It appears dozens of times in the Vinaya. It appears in many different sutras. This is something the Buddha said over and over again. Because there is ignorance, because of the condition of ignorance, there is formation. Because of the condition of formation, there is consciousness. Because of the condition of consciousness, there is name and form. Each leads to the next. Because of the condition of name and form, there are the six sense bases. Six sense bases. Because of the condition of the six sense bases, there is contact. Because of the condition of contact, there is feeling. Because of the condition of feeling, there is craving. Because of the condition of craving, there is grasping. Because of the condition of grasping, there is becoming. You grasp and then you do something, right? That because of the condition of grasping, there's becoming. Because of becoming, that karmic action you're doing, there is birth. And because there is birth, there is aging and death and sorrow and lamentation and unhappiness and fighting and the entire mass of samsaric suffering. So this is just showing how it goes through, that whole cycle. Because it's really important for us. Even if we want to study those higher topics, we want to study interdependence as it's taught in the Middle Way, excellent. It's a great idea to do that. But you have to have, if you really want to understand it, you have to make it, if you don't really take it personally, it's not going to really be anything other than intellectual understanding. You have to see how your own life and your own being, your own existence comes in the same way, to look at on this gross form of the conditions that bring you to where you are now and where your actions that you're doing now are going to take you. If you don't look at it on this personal level, then it's just going to be an intellectual idea. So you have to come back to this idea, the beginning of understanding these 12 links as they go through. Now, of course, we also have to understand it on the level that it's taught in the Middle Way and so forth. I'm not going to dispute that, but in order to understand that, you also have to understand this. Because if we don't have a sense of why is there suffering in samsara, how does the suffering in samsara happen, then all of the Dharma that we practice and study is only going to be a head game. It's only going to be an intellectual exercise. We're going to end up at the end of this lifetime being intellectuals and not really be able to go any further. When we get to our deathbed, intellect isn't going to take us very far. We have to have that confidence that that having done virtue and having developed real understanding is going to bring us. And so in order to get that, we have to contemplate things like that. We have to understand. Like when you're doing Mahamudra practice, the first thing you have to do is you have to do the preliminaries. And when people do the preliminaries, they usually skip the 4 common preliminaries. Or if they don't skip it, they spend 2 days on each and think they've got it. And then, but really, if you don't understand what samsara is, how can you even go for refuge? And if you don't understand these links of interdependence, how can you understand what samsara is? It's really important that we take this and we use it. It's not just a list of 12 things to know in the Abhidharma. It's something that we have to think about as like, wow, this is how I got here. This is what this is leading to. How does it get there? That's why we do it. It is this cycle that leads to the birth, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, unhappiness, fighting, and the entire mass of samsaric suffering. The Buddha said this over and over and over again. So we really have to take it. And so when we look at these 12 links of interdependence, well, there's that first level of saying, okay, each leads to the next, but we also have to kind of understand what they all are. So that's what the next verse, at the last one, verse 26ab on page 238 says. 3 are afflictions, 2 are karma, 7 are bases. So 3 are afflictions. So afflictions, the first one that's affliction is ignorance. Right? And then, I'm going to need a longer one. Then we've got the two more are afflictions, so craving and grasping. So ignorance, craving, and grasping, these 3 are afflictions. 2 are karma. So the 2 that are karma are formation and becoming. I might as well write this up. I don't know if I can do this gracefully on screen. Turn your eyes as I do something ungraceful. Stretch out here. A. K. These A's are going to have to go on this side, sorry. A. K. This A is not so clear. So we've got 3 afflictions, ignorance, craving, and grasping. We've got 2 karma, formation and becoming. And then we've got 7 that are bases: consciousness, name and form, 6 sense bases, contact, feeling, birth, and aging and death. So that's 7, right? I'm not going to put the G's next to each of them because I can't lean over that far. It wouldn't be graceful, so I'm not going to try. Right? So the 7 that don't have a G, that should have a G next to them, are the bases, or B or G, ground or bases. Why would I say G? Okay, so to read the commentary, of the 12 links, 3 are afflictions: ignorance, craving, and grasping. Of these, ignorance is the cause of the current birth, and craving and grasping are the cause of the future birth. So we've got ignorance. Remember, birth comes out of ignorance and karma. So ignorance causes karma that then causes birth, right? So we've got ignorance is the cause of this whole set of this lifetime, right? Then we've got craving and grasping are the cause of this lifetime, right? So we're talking about this causes this, this causes that, these 2 cause this. To be specific, we say that this ignorance causes that consciousness, and these craving and grasping cause that birth. I think if I turn my head like that, am I not getting picked up on the... I'll have to be careful to speak into the microphone. I'm going to move the mic over here a little bit, so maybe I'll be better. Okay. The 2 links of formation and becoming are karma. So formation and becoming, these 2 are karma. These cause the present and future births. So becoming here, the formation here is the karma that causes consciousness. Becoming here is the karma that causes birth. And then there are 7 links that are bases. They are the support of karma and afflictions, or because they are support of karma and afflictions, 7 links are bases. The 5 from consciousness to feeling, birth, aging, and death. So we've got consciousness, name, form, 6 sense bases, contact, and feeling. That's 5. Birth and aging and death, that makes a total of 7. So we're talking about, when we look at this, we've got the ignorance, or the affliction and karma in the previous lifetime function to produce the 5 in this lifetime. The afflictions and karma in this lifetime produce the bases in the next lifetime. But these bases also function as the support for craving, grasping, and becoming. So the bases are the reason it's called a basis, is it's like the foundation, the ground. It's like you're going to, if you want to do an action, you have to have some sort of a basis that you can do it. Right? So that's the way that you've got these 7 are the bases. And so in this way, you would say that to make a play on the English word, they're interdependent. because ignorance is dependent upon these five sense bases. And that ignorance is also dependent upon them. So they're dependent on the ignorance. Ignorance is dependent upon them. It's like each dependent upon each other. They're interdependent. To talk about it, to kind of use that English word. The English word really isn't it's not a literal translation of the Sanskrit or the Tibetan word. The Sanskrit word pratitya samutpada. Pratitya would mean like coming into dependence on, the dependence or the contact. And because of that contact, there is the birth. So like the coming together, the meeting and the contact, and then because of that contact, there is a rising. Pratitya samutpada. This is explained very nicely in the Chim Jambayang's ornament of Abhidharma that I recommended on the first day. It's also explained in the auto commentary, so you can also read it in the various translations, like the Lodar Sampo translation of that as well. And then teaching that the seven are results, 26b at the top of page 239, and results. So the seven bases are also results. These are the results of the karma and afflictions. The seven branches that are the bases for karma and the afflictions also are results, because the result of ignorance and formation is the five from consciousness to feeling, not feeding. Pick this up so I can see it more clearly. And the result of craving, grasping, and becoming is the two links of birth and aging and death. So these seven bases, they're not only bases for actions, they're also bases for karma and afflictions, they're also the results, right? So these five are the result of these two are the result of these three, okay? Now, but there is a question that comes up here, is if you look at it, it says like, well, we've got, in the previous lifetime, we've got 2 links. In the middle lifetime, we've got 8 links. And then in the last lifetime, we have 2 links. So why is it that we have 8 links here and only 2 links in the previous and in the future lifetimes? And the reason for not explaining the previous and next lives in detail is cause and result of 2 is concise. One can infer them from the middle. So the causes of the 2 in the next lifetime and the results of the 2 in the first lifetime, they're given, the causes, the 2 in the first, and the results, the 2 in the future, are given in short, and one can infer them from the middle. To read the commentary. Well, for this lifetime, the 5 results from consciousness to feeling in both karma and afflictions are explained in detail. We've got a lot of detail, lots of different links here, but not much detail there. So why in the future lifetime are they condensed in the 2 results of birth and aging and death? So here, in particular, the 5 results, consciousness and feeling, are condensed as 2 in there. And in the previous lifetime, you've got the 3 of craving, grasping, and becoming. That's all condensed down into 2. Why? The links of cause and result of the 2, past and future lives, is taught concisely. The detailed explanations of the 2 causes in the past lifetime and 5 results in future lifetimes are not given. This is because one can infer them from the detailed explanation of cause and effect in the middle. There's no need to tire yourself pointlessly. In other words, we don't need to have 24 links of interdependence. 12 will do, because we can just say that, these 8 are all kind of included in these 2. In particular, these 3 are all included in these 2. These 5 are included in these 2. So we don't need to go and tire ourselves out. But it's important to remember that it's not like this is something separate than that and that. It's just when you're looking at it from a different perspective. If we kind of take a look at it from the perspective of, in the previous lifetime, we've got what? We've got, say, let's just take we're humans in this lifetime. So you've got a human in this lifetime. Tashi. We'll use a Tibetan name that could be either male or female. Tashi in this lifetime. In a previous lifetime, Tashi was a toad. Okay? So here, Tashi is a toad. Here it's Tashi. And then in the future lifetime, what is Tashi? Tashi is a demigod, kind of going up. We'll take it on a somewhat hopeful perspective. I guess demigod is not very hopeful. Let's say God. That's better. Okay, toad, Tashi, God, right? So in the perspective, when Tashi is a toad, we're going to look at the various toad activities that I don't know, what does a toad do? It eats bugs, right? But that's not a virtuous activity. Okay, this is a toad that happened to see the Dalai Lama and felt faith, okay? There are stories in the Vinaya. There's one story in the Vinaya of a group of 500 frogs who saw the Buddha when he was crossing the Ganges River and were reborn humans. So, this toad sees the Dalai Lama, and because of the imprint of that is reborn not only human, but Tibetan, Tashi, right? And Tashi, because of the imprints from the previous lifetime, therefore has craving and grasping for good things and practices meditation and is reborn as a god, or does something good and is reborn as a god. He didn't get the point about bodhicitta, unfortunately. So he was reborn as a god instead of making it all the way out. So it was okay for him to be reborn as a god, right? So here we've got toad, it's ignorance and formation. Tashi is like this. And then God is here. But let's think about it. We've got this God. Because he's a God, he's going to waste his entire lifetime, or she's going to waste her entire lifetime, doing nothing, and in the next lifetime fall into hell. So if we think about it from the perspective of the God lifetime, there's Tashi. Tashi felt faith and so forth, but didn't quite get the message about bodhicitta, was born as a God. That is the God Tashi. And then because of that, there is the Hell Tashi. So when we think about the God Tashi in that perspective, then we'd have all 8 links. And when we think about in terms of the perspective of the human life being the main life, then there would be the 8 links. But here, when you think about it as the God Tashi, as the primary link, then the human would be short. Am I just getting too confusing here? No, this is okay? And then we've got the Hell Tashi, the birth and aging and death. A long time. Okay, so it's like saying, basically, when we talk about these 8 links, the 8 links are happening in not every lifetime, most lifetimes. Because in some lifetimes, when you're reborn miraculously, like we mentioned this yesterday, right? When you're reborn miraculously, then you're fully developed at the beginning. You're born in the form realm. You're already fully developed. There's no need to go through the process of development. But in general, this is like for birth and desire realm. So we'll imagine that Tashi had been reborn as a desire realm god, for example. Okay? All right. So dispelling others' doubts. Now, sometimes people might wonder, why are there only 12? And here is a quote, and this is actually apparently a quote from the sutras. Afflictions bear afflictions action. From that the bases, and from those arise the bases and afflictions. This is existence's progression. Well, it follows that samsara has a beginning and end because ignorance has no cause and aging and death has no result, right? We've got 12 links of ignorance, 12 links of interdependence, and ignorance is the first one. There's nothing before it. That's a problem, isn't it? And there's nothing after aging and death, so either you only have 3 lifetimes, or this presentation is incomplete. There's just no other way around it, they say. If you agree, that it follows that more links should be added. So if you want to have causes for ignorance, then you have to have some other links to go for the lifetime before that. And you want to have results for this lifetime, so you add more to the other. And if you do that, it's going to end up just being infinite. So if you agree, it follows that more links should be added because those two need a cause and result. This would therefore become endless because of your assertion, you say. So here's the point. It does not become endless, that more links need to be added. The Bhagavan has said that the affliction of craving bears the affliction of grasping, and the afflictions bear the karma of action itself. Formation arises out of ignorance. So here we have craving leading to grasping. Craving and grasping together lead to the action of becoming. These afflictions lead to karma. The same here, the afflictions leading to karma. So from that karma of formation and becoming, the bases of consciousness and so forth arise. So we've got that formation, we've got becoming, and that leads to birth. That's the link of consciousness, and aging and death is these 5 here, right? So the becoming is leading to the 5 bases, just as formation is leading to the 5 bases here. So it's the same thing. It's like a cycle. It's like we're talking about 2 complete cycles here. 2 complete cycles over 3 lifetimes. From those arise the bases of name and form to feeling and aging and death. And then from these bases of feeling and aging and death, so these birth and aging and death, so we've got feeling and aging and death. Remember, aging and death is all of these. So feeling leads to craving. Likewise, aging and death leads to craving. Right? So this is how the results lead to causes, because anything that is a cause is also a result. Anything that is a result is also a cause. But it depends on how you look at it. So the afflictions of ignorance, craving, grasping arise. This is how the links of existence progress. So you've got them presented in short form here, leading to the full development, the full results. And because of these act as causes for craving, grasping, and becoming, which then cause an additional existence. These then act, and it all goes in a big cycle. Whether you break it out into more detail or less detail really depends on how you look at it, and the perspective, which lifetime. So the distinction between arising and arisen. Here, because we talk about interdependence and we talk about interdependent phenomena. It's like interdependence produces interdependent phenomena. Right? You've got like one, it seems like one is a cause and one is the result. Here, what is arising is a cause, what has arisen is a result. Here, in this presentation from the sutras, what is arising in interdependence is a link that is a cause, because something arises from it. So we have the present, what is arising is a cause. So we've got, particularly like when we have ignorance or formation arising, these are acting as causes for consciousness and so forth. And what has arisen in interdependence is proposed as a link that abides because it has arisen. So something arises and it's got a period that it stays. It might only be a very short period. But therefore, all the links are proven to be both arising and arisen because they are both a cause and a result. So, the ignorance is a cause. Ignorance and formation are causes of these 5, and so in that sense, they're causes. But the ignorance and karma are also a result of the consciousness up to feeling, the 5 aggregates, right? So one causes the next. So in relation to consciousness, ignorance is a cause. In relation to feeling, ignorance is a result. In relation to feeling, craving is a result. In relation to grasping, it is a cause. In relation to birth, craving is a cause. Right? So it's talking about how one leads to the other. So they all function as a cause for each other. When you look at it, you can also look at this, and we often in debate will talk about how things function as causes at the next moment of the same thing. When we talk about it in terms of logic, in terms of looking at external phenomena, like we'll talk about a pot. Each moment of a pot is both a cause and a result. Causes and results are said to be synonymous, except that a cause is never its own result, and a result is never its own cause. But if something is a thing, it is both a cause and a result. Any thing is a cause of what comes after it, but it is also a result of what came before it, within its own continuum or within its own causal complex of causes. So that's what we're talking about here. They arise in different ways. So although this is so, cause and result do not get mixed up, because when they arise depending on something else, that something else does not depend upon them. For example, in relation to one's own father, one is the child and not the father. So when you have your own child, When you have a child, then you are the mother or the father. And that child, you are a child in relationship to your own mother and father. But that you aren't their child. I mean, you are their child, but you aren't their parent. You aren't your own parent. Someone else is your parent. Someone else could be your child, right? It's like, it's all independence upon each other. It's like we have these situations of the five aggregates, and all of these links are the five aggregates. And the five aggregates in relation to what comes later in their continuum would be causes. In relation to what came earlier, they are results. So cause and result. Everything that is a cause is also a result. Everything that is a result is also a cause. But they don't get mixed up because it all depends upon which, in relation to which are you looking. So that's the main point here. In relation to one's father, one is the child and not the father. And so I think that is enough of this for today. We've come to a good stopping place, and so we'll continue with this not tomorrow, because tomorrow is Monday. So all of you who are listening online, we have our weekly day off at Trango Monastery, Canada on Mondays. So we don't have classes on Mondays. I mean, it's like in the current lockdown, it's like, what's the difference between a day off and a not day off? Because the monastery is closed to people from outside anyways. It's like it's all the same day. But still, we observe this ritual of having days off on Mondays. And so we will continue to observe the ritual in hopes that soon we will actually be able to do it, what do we say, have the actual, have people come and join us. So we could have a larger studio audience, it would be nice. But that being said, we're in the current situation where we're at. I mean, just to sort of talk about the situation with the coronavirus pandemic and so forth, we're at the point now where all over the world people have been in lockdown for 2, some places 3 months, and people are getting tired of it. And we look out and we see that things are getting better. And we think to ourselves, I'm okay, or maybe I already got better. We think, boy, I've been inside for a long time. I'd just love to go to that garden. I'd love to go see my mother. I'd love to go do this. It's Mother's Day today. I have to call my mother. I have to go see my mother. We think of all these things. We have these things that we want to do. We haven't seen people we love for a long time. And it's difficult. So this is actually, I think, kind of the hardest point. Because we want to go out and do these things now. And yet, if we all do it, we're just going to pass the virus around more. So we've gone through 2 months of difficulty, staying inside, not going anywhere, and wanting to see people. I think actually here at the Trango Monastery, Canada, those of us who are inside are kind of fortunate, but a lot of people are not and have a very difficult time. And so this is a point where we really have to be careful for ourselves. We have to be careful about our mind. Even sitting here in this monastery in pretty much the best of all positions for quarantine, it still gets a little bit constricted. I'd kind of like to go. There are some nice gardens around Vancouver, and personally, I'd love to go visit them. I'd love to go tomorrow. Some of them are even opening up. But we have to think. We have to really think, because if we let down our guard too much, then we're just going to be in a position where we cause more problems for other people, where our own actions are going to inadvertently lead to more aging, death, grief, lamentation, unhappiness, fighting, and the entire mass of samsaric suffering. So we have to be really careful right now. It's a hard time. It's a very difficult time. And I call my mother every day, and she's like really having a hard time because it's a difficult thing for us to do. We want to go out. We want to see people. And so we have to be really careful now. We have to really think through things well. Be careful about yourself. Be careful about other people. It's not just, you might think I can go off and see my family and it's not going to be a problem. No, my family's sick. Well, the problem with this virus is that we don't know who is sick and who is not. We don't know who has it and who doesn't. people look fine and they pass it on to many other people. And then they come back someplace where they go out for a little while, they come back in a couple of days, and they don't know, you've gone out, you don't know if the people you've been with have it or not, because they have no way of knowing. And they come back and pass it along. And within the small community, you might be in a small bubble, and it's hard to be with just a small group of people, your same couple of housemates or yourself. But if you bring it back and they get sick. So it's a really difficult situation we all have to think about. So really the best thing we can do at a time like this is spend our time doing Dharma practice. And so those of you who are joining me now for this, both live, the small studio audience, but a lot more people are watching this online. It is a difficult time, and I really appreciate that. And when I speak to my mother every day, I feel like it. I really feel her pain. And I know that a lot of other people are having the same situation. But we have to do what we can, and the only thing that we can really do is use the Dharma to help ourselves through a situation like this. We can do some meditation. We can recite some Mani mantras. If you're really reciting the Mani mantra, all that kind of mental loneliness and suffering is going to be relieved, at least while you're reciting it, if you're really thinking about it. You develop compassion, because when you get bored, when you get stir-crazy, that's thinking, me. I have to do something, makes myself feel good, I have to do. And so when you start thinking, Om Mani Padme Hum, and you think about Chenrezig, or maybe you feel more comfortable reciting Medicine Buddha, or maybe you feel more comfortable reciting green tar or white tar. But with any of those, their essence is compassion. And so when you start really thinking about other sentient beings with compassion, then there's no way that you can be bored. Your depression, your difficulties, your mental difficulties will all go away. Now, reciting manis is not going to put food on the table, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. But there are two things. There's the suffering of the economic difficulty that you have, the physical situation. Then there's the mental suffering that makes it worse. And so if you take the time to actually do some Dharma practice, and maybe even do something simple that you'd never would have thought to do, just a simple Dharma practice, like reciting a few Mani mantras even, is going to be really beneficial in a situation like that. And so with that, I would like to finish for today. Also, one thing I meant to say at the beginning, and I realized that I'm totally not interested in publicity, and so I didn't really care about what happened with publicity, except they put, the Trungpa Monastery put something out, and they did probably a much better job of publicity than I would have done. My assistant, Karma Choephel, from the Namo Buddha Tibetan program, sent a lot of emails, and a lot of people know, but I don't know how it happened, but it seems like a fair number of people are watching these talks, which is kind of embarrassing that you'd all tune in and watch me. But there are also people who found out about this later. But the nature of these talks, of course, I say a few things that are situational, okay, from time to time, like this little, pep talk about the coronavirus pandemic. But it doesn't really matter when you listen to them. And so if you're starting these talks later, if you're picking up in the middle and you want to join us, of course that's fine, and you can always go back. Everything's up on YouTube, and also on the Gompa Services website, so you can download all of these talks and watch them at your own leisure. But if you are wondering why didn't you hear about it beforehand, it's just because I'm terrible at publicity, and so that's my own fault. So sorry about that. So let's now dedicate the merit of teaching and listening, so that all sentient beings may be relieved of all suffering, temporary suffering such as that of this pandemic, and eventually, as well as the longer-term sufferings of just being in samsara, so that they may all be liberated and brought to the state of lasting happiness, the omniscience of Buddhahood. Please recite the dedication of merit. Osanam de tam jesipani tomne nye pedra nam pam chene kegana chimparlap trobai Si petzole drowa drolwan sho. Thank you.